Welcome viewers. For this video I have a great topic which has been on my mind a lot. In a recent update of Deep Rock Galactic, a change was made to include the Industrial Sabotage mission within Deep Dives and Elite Deep Dive as a regular mission. This has the effect of causing some issues for most average crews, because I feel that the average player isn't all that experienced with the unique demands of this mission. This video is not going to talk about the specifics of the mission, or offer a more exhaustive overview that some of my other videos do. Instead, this one is to specifically talk about how the driller can be more effective in this mission. It is my opinion that driller tends to have the least overall utility of the four dwarves. I say this up until the point where I'm playing as some other class and think to myself, you know, it'd be really nice to have some driller and tools on hand right about now. And then I go to play driller and never really contribute that much to the team besides the usual crowd control and thinking about scout with C4 meme. It will be assumed that you are also generally familiar with the four basic classes of this game and the general mechanics. If you are new to the game, welcome, glad to have you along. Let's get right to work. To help us understand how this concept is going to work under a more sanitary environment, we have a sandbox environment here with a mod that allows us to, well, turn the lights on, like this. Because flares, even with strong arm, which is as much as I love that perk for what it is, to allow me to make up for various scouts who don't do their job very well, it's a lot easier to use this to allow us to understand the picture a lot better. The first principle is that if a cave has a natural terrain extension or feature that extends up and above, like a ledge, above the structure here, then of course take advantage of that. But you may also have some difficulties in getting up there. But you're a driller, so you can typically get to that point or use a zip line or whatever you need to do to get up there. So the advantage of doing that is that you have the ability to not have to be so precise on how you set it up. So the way that's going to basically work like is you're going to have an engineer build you platforms if you need to, which will extend out a bit more. It's generally the most you have to do. And if you do this, the only consideration you really need to worry about is you want to make the platform here a double wide one, because that's going to give the driller a lot more leeway in being able to walk up this pathway without falling off, while also having to worry about sniper turrets, robots, shredder drones, repulse fields, and other kinds of things like the robotic appendages that tend to cause a lot of problems. So it's sometimes a faster way, but also it's a little bit more risky and you have a lot more exposure. But it is a viable way to set this up, or I should probably say alternative, because you don't have to be so precise with it. Keep in mind with all these approaches, you don't want to put your C4 until this force field here is completely down. Otherwise, when you do so like this, and you do actually take the force field down, the C4 is still going to remain where it is until you actually detonate it. So it's kind of like when you put C4 on the drill dozer and then the drill dozer keeps moving in space, the C4 will just kind of stay up there in space. So that's not always the best thing to do. Something you will often see people try to do is they'll have a gunner put up zip lines to basically extend over the structure like this, so that a driller can then drop C4 from above. And that basically has a more risky approach than using the platform bridge like this, because you're much more vulnerable to the effects of being pushed off the zip line by the sniper turrets or other kinds of things that can easily take you down, like shredder drones. And this little terrain feature right here, which I did not initially spot on the map when I first looked at this, is actually a perfect way to showcase, like, if you have a natural terrain feature like this one, go ahead and use it. It's a good way to save some time if you can, because then now you only have to drill up a little bit more and up this pathway, and it's basically already pre-made for you. And so here, this one, you don't even need to make any extensions with plat bridges, although I probably would want one. It looks like this. By the way, if you use a zip line, let's say you're using the platform bridge like this, and you use a zip line as like an escape way or a way to get up here, it's probably best that you only use it as an escape way, because going up here slowly is just too, it's just too risky. So let's try the main approach, which is what I normally like to do, which is the tunnel path. And that basically works in that you're going to try to make a hole in the ceiling, about like right here somewhere, and you're going to make a hole in there and then chuck C4 to the top of this little structure here. The general way I like to do that is start by looking at the map and then seeing what kind of convenient, relatively modest elevation terrain might already exist that makes my path to the top here a lot shorter. But it also does not restrict me from getting to the bottom to revive teammates, because most people like to fight at the bottom of this particular structure here, this bottom base floor. And the problem with that is that this is where most of the damage comes from, but it also doesn't give you many places to fall back to. So usually if I have a choice in these missions, what I like to do is have a nice easy way to get out of the situation and kind of like reset, if you will. So that would kind of look like, maybe like this way. You can just have your resupplies back here, and this kind of gets you out of the way of the main 4 robotic appendages and the repulse field, the sniper turrets. It just kind of gives you a chance to kind of like recover your breath. That's another way that a lot of teams fail. They just try to YOLO everything onto the bottom floor here and then just hope for the best. And then they run out of ammo or health or both, and then the mission fails. And then they get really upset. So let's show you the drill path. So I'm going to start from probably right here, because I want to drill up and above to the top right here, but also I want to have an easy path to the bottom floor here, just for the sake of my teammates. Because sometimes when you're doing this, you're the last person alive, because some people take on a little bit more than they can handle. Quick note about this tunnel, by the way, you want it to be nice and smooth like this. If you like to use the same type of tunnels some people like to use when they drill to the drop pod in a hurry, which looks like this, you basically jump as you drill upwards at usually a fairly steep angle. The problem with doing this is it's technically more efficient on driller feel and can be a little bit faster. The main issue that I have with it is that the path is very dirty, basically. There's lots of little mini ledges and little paths that kind of make you have to crawl it up and down. And thank you, Molly, for helping out with this instruction thing here. And these really make it more difficult for you to quickly traverse this tunnel and get to where you need to go. Or if somebody has to, somebody has to come revive you, then it makes their work a lot more difficult. So now that I'm out of the main cave terrain feature, I'm going to go up at an angle about 45 to the southeast here. It really does help to have the weapon Heat Crosshair mod, which doesn't work in Sandbox when I switch characters on the fly with this little feature here. By the way you get all the overclocks unlocked here without actually having them is you can go into the menu here, and you can open up the cheat terminal, and which you can't see here because I'm in a mission, and you can like give yourself resources and unlock all the overclocks. It's kind of cool. But the weapon overheat crosshair places a little rotary indicator on your crosshair, which works with pretty much all the weapons or implements that have overheat, such as the wave cooker and the driller tools, the minigun, and the DRG 25, all which, the heat is part of their balance mechanic. Having that on your Crosshair directly, it makes you a lot more effective at using that weapon, especially the minigun and the Drak, because those are primary weapons. So now that I'm at this angle right here, I'm going to turn to the left here and run by the northeast, and I'm also going to go up at a slight angle because I want to be above this main cave terrain feature at the top. So let's go ahead and do that now. You want to check your progress frequently to make sure that you don't run into the top of the cave wall and fall down to the bottom and go down, but also that you keep an eye on how your pathing is doing. So I've done this for a bit, so I kind of get the general gist of it most of the time, but it's always good to keep a good close eye on this. So now that I'm pretty comfortable with the altitude of this, I should be able to drill straight across, as you can see from the terrain scanner. So let's go at a straight 0 across. And then once you are directly above the structure, like about right here, maybe a little bit more, you can look down here, and then what you can do from here is take your drills at a 45-degree angle like this, and just kind of slowly sculpt out the bottom of the tunnel here. It takes a bit of practice to be able to know instinctively when to stop so you don't fall at the bottom, because it does happen. We're human. And then once you open up like this, you can just kind of turn around and just kind of sculpt it back a little bit this way to give you more room, and just kind of open it up just a little bit. You can also use your pickaxe if you're concerned about, you know, opening up too much and falling out the bottom like this. And what you want is a hole that allows you to drop the C4 without having the C4 hang up on any part of the cave terrain itself. So it looks like I have a little bit more work to do here, but it's good for showing you how it works and how you can fine tune it to make sure it works. Looks a little scary, doesn't it? It's okay. You can see what I'm doing here is kind of like fixing the little difference in the terrain altitude here, and that's perfectly normal. You'll get better at making the little difference here a little bit less each time and more accurate. Yeah, I went way too high. After you're done with this little path here, what you can do is come back to probably about right here and then drill a little pocket that you can drop a resupply into like this. And what this is going to do is going to allow you to refill your stock from the from up here without having to go downstairs. Now, some of the more enterprising people I've played with like to, as soon as the power supplies are done, they like to make a real fast and speedy point to order all the resupplies down here and, yeah, well, ready to go. And you end up with nothing up here afterwards for yourself, because this is something that you totally commit to. You don't just like drop one or two at the start and say, oh, I'm done. This is something that you set up here, and you specifically are here for most of your C4. So that's your C4 resupply pod, and they can fight for everything else downstairs. Now, if you have extremely limited resupplies or none up for yourself, then your chance of the mission being successful is much lower. If all your teammates will order all the supplies downstairs, then what you're going to have to do is go up and downstairs to refill them each time. So having it up here by yourself makes it more efficient. I've never really had much of a problem with enemies coming through this hole, but you could have an engineer plug the gap for you. But usually I try to hide this pod for myself, because sometimes, scouts in particular will come up here and try to steal your supplies. They complain there's none downstairs when there's usually 3. So from here, all you have to do is just chuck C4 down like this and detonate it. You generally need 4 charges to take almost all the shields off. It's about 90% on hazard 5 of the structure itself. If you use the 4 C4 type build, If you use the more powerful 2 C4 build, then you're probably going to still use all 2 of them. So you typically will go use 2 of these resupply elements to take out 1 shield. So when you start this, you want to make sure you have a full C4 before you start the mission and before you take any resupplies. So don't use your C4 all that much when you're messing around with the power stations. And now that we've gone over this part, all we have to do is show how this works in a real mission. That's a little bit more exciting. So let's get to that next. Now, other good uses of C4 include the Hive Guard Dreadnought in his shield phase, and the Omen Extermination unit when you have more than 1 subsystem vulnerable. In that case, you can kind of use the same practice I showed here, where you can get a little drill path to the top of the ceiling and then chuck C4 through the top. It can be particularly effective, especially because you won't be attacked by the radio pulse gun module or the twin slicer, which the twin slicer often destroys a lot of engineered platforms made to deal with some of the modules on this unit. And you also don't get attacked by the heavy burster either. The only real threat is the drone replicator if you get one of those. Now, I only used the flamethrower for this mission, the Glacial Strata biome and rival presence missions exclusively. Otherwise, I used the cryo cannon. But I've also seen the rare exceptional VIM sludge pump builds work very well. But the main reason for using the flamethrower in this mission is that it makes dealing with the robots and the sensory turrets a lot easier. And the wave cooker I use because it's really good for thermal shot on enemies to break thicker targets such as grunt guards and praetorians, but also because the wave cooker doesn't really have a range limitation or restriction, so it's good for breaking down the sniper turrets at very long distances. By the way, something I did not learn soon enough in DRG, but probably should have, is that DRG is not a game built with tanking or absorbing damage in mind. In Team Fortress 2, you have a medic or soldier with a conch banner or scout with med milk to help out with that. More specifically, in Man vs. Machine, you generally do not want to use a medic because a medic means less team damage output, and more damage output means less damage taken. Dispensers, med milk, health packs, health and kill, and so on are fine for nearly all maps except the very spammy and hard custom MVM maps. The medic meta only came about because Two Cities maps were a lot more spammy than the normal maps people were used to, and thus the medic came along to band-aid weak crews just long enough to make up for the large gaps in skill and experience. Anyways, this isn't a TF2 video, but to sum up, DRG is more about run and gun, avoid damage rather than tank hit type of game, unless you count freezing mobs with a cryo cannon and using barb drills with the vampire perk to take on much more than you technically should be dealing with. I highly recommend the Sandbox Utilities mod for general experimentation and testing, the Glowing Lines mod to make zip lines a lot more visible, especially in dark caves, the Weapon Heat Crosshair mod, and the Fast Forging mod for making forging lots of overclocks a much faster process. If you get your own resupply pods for C4, don't take anybody else's resupplies as they need it for their part of the caretaker. Use a waypoint marker to mark your entrance so you can find your entrance back should you get lost or disoriented from it, by either looking at the map overview or by just pressing the control key to pull up your laser pointer and highlight your waypoint in space. Against shredder drones, the drillers work very well. The flamer and impact axes work very well against the patrol bots that happen to sneak up through this entrance. Now, there's a lot of fat boy PGL 40mm addicts out there, and once you've used one a handful of times, it's hard to resist the calling of a massive boom and radiation cloud. You might be also wondering if this could work on Industrial Sabotage, and I have good news. Yes. Since you won't likely have access to a tunnel above like the driller can do, you'll have to make your own pathway up with plats. I recommend a 2-1-3-2-2 build as you want the extra damage distance in tier 4 to do better damage to the shield units. It's a viable substitute for this whole driller and C4 bomb dropping thing. Don't use Neurotoxin in Industrial Sabotage. Honestly, I found the 3-1-1-1-3 Big Bertha autocannon to be superior in almost all categories to the other gunner options in terms of damage, damage per second, endurance, and versatility. It seems to have a deep ammo pocket pool compared to the others, and I give it my full endorsement and recommendation. 3-2-3-1-2 exhaust vectoring minigun is second best. The Hurricane missile launcher is fun for a change of pace, but fails to really shine at anything in particular. The only build I've liked is the 2-1-2-1-2 overtuned feed mechanism rapid fire build, which has great DPS and is fun to use, but lacks on ammo endurance. I exclusively use a BRT7 with 232-31 compact mags, although there are other builds available, depending on what kind of playstyle you have. As a final note to all the new players, I got all 4 minors promoted and perks maxed out around rank 40. I didn't get all the weapon overclocks until around rank 266, but a lot of casual play with others was a factor in that rank number, so it would be technically a lot lower if you only focus on deep dives and core hunts once you got all the minors promoted. Getting all the achievements took me about 530 hours of playtime. Most of that was a miserable slog to get all the minors gold promoted. Don't be disheartened by this, just stating what a reasonably dedicated person might be able to achieve with these milestones. And that's all I have for now, folks. As the soldier says in Team Fortress 2, stay frosty. Thank you for watching, and as always, rock and stone.